there comes a point in life when you realize something powerful. No matter how much you explain yourself, not everyone will understand you. And even worse, not everyone deserves your explanation. Most people grow up believing that if they clarify their intentions, defend their actions, or justify their choices, they will be accepted, respected, or understood. But life slowly teaches a different truth. The truth is simple. People don't see you as you are. They see you as they are. Stop trying to explain yourself to everyone is one of the most important lessons in personal growth and emotional maturity. Yet, it is also one of the hardest habits to break. From a young age, people are taught to defend themselves, to justify their actions, and to make sure others understand their intentions. This creates a mindset where approval becomes linked with explanation. The more someone misunderstands us, the more we feel the need to clarify, correct, and convince. But over time, this habit drains energy, weakens confidence, and keeps a person trapped in a cycle of seeking validation that never truly satisfies. When you constantly try to explain yourself to everyone, you begin to lose control over your own peace of mind. You start living as if every opinion about you needs correction, as if every misunderstanding requires your immediate response. This creates emotional exhaustion because not every person is willing to understand you in the first place. Some people listen not to understand, but to respond, judge, or criticize. In such situations, no amount of explanation will change their perception. Instead, it only feeds their curiosity or strengthens their assumptions. The effort becomes one-sided and your energy is wasted on minds that are already closed. There is also a deeper psychological aspect to this behavior. When you feel the need to constantly explain yourself, it often comes from insecurity or fear of rejection. You may believe that if people understand your side, they will accept you. But acceptance that depends on explanation is fragile and temporary. Real respect does not require constant justification. People who truly value you will not need long explanations to trust your intentions. They observe your consistency, your actions, and your character over time. Those who do not value you will always find something to question, no matter how clearly you explain yourself. Another important truth is that over-explaining reduces your personal authority. When you try too hard to make others understand you, you unknowingly place yourself in a position of defense. You begin to sound like you are guilty of something that does not even need approval. Trohar snorts Tro. This weakens your presence and makes your words less impactful. Strong individuals do not feel the need to defend every decision they make. They are comfortable with being misunderstood because they know their truth does not depend on external validation in life. Misunderstanding is inevitable. No matter how clear you try to be, someone will always interpret your actions differently. This is because people filter everything through their own experiences, emotions, and biases. What you say is not always what they hear. What you mean is not always what they understand. Accepting this reality brings a sense of freedom. It allows you to focus less on controlling perceptions and more on controlling your actions. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you begin to protect your mental space. You learn to choose your battles wisely. You stop reacting to every opinion and start conserving your energy for things that truly matter. This shift does not mean you become silent in all situations, but rather that you become selective about where your words are worth spending. You begin to understand that peace is more valuable than being right in every conversation. There is also a transformation in how people treat you. When you are no longer constantly defending yourself, others begin to take your words more seriously. Silence creates curiosity and respect. It signals confidence, not weakness. People start to realize that your approval is not easily available and your time is not meant for unnecessary justification. This changes the dynamic of how others interact with you and reduces unnecessary conflict in your life. Not everyone deserves your explanation or attention is a truth that becomes clearer with experience, not theory. Has snorts in the beginning of life. People often believe that every misunderstanding must be corrected and every opinion must be answered. There is a strong desire to be understood by everyone, to be seen correctly, and to ensure that no one carries a wrong impression. But as time passes, you begin to realize that not every person asking questions is genuinely interested in your truth, and not every listener deserves access to your energy or your explanation. Many people will enter your life with curiosity, but not all curiosity comes from respect. Some people ask questions only to gather information that they can later twist or misuse. Others seek explanations not to understand you, but to find flaws in your reasoning or to validate their own judgments. In such situations, giving explanations does not bring clarity. It only feeds unnecessary drama. You begin to notice that the more you try to explain, the more your words are taken out of context or misunderstood. This creates frustration because your intention is honesty, but the result becomes confusion or misinterpretation. Understanding who deserves your attention is a form of emotional intelligence. Attention is not just time, it is energy. Every conversation you engage in, every explanation you give, and every attempt you make to justify yourself consumes mental and emotional strength. When this energy is given to the wrong people, it leaves you drained and mentally exhausted. Not everyone who asks deserves an answer, and not everyone who listens deserves your truth. Some people are only present to distract you, not to support you, and recognizing this difference protects your inner peace. There is also a hidden cost in over-explaining to the wrong people. When you continuously try to make everyone understand you, you slowly begin to lose clarity about your own identity. You start shaping your words in a way that pleases others instead of expressing what you truly feel. This creates internal conflict because you are no longer speaking from authenticity, but from the pressure of acceptance. Over time, this weakens your self-trust and makes you dependent on external validation, which is never stable or reliable. Not everyone has the emotional capacity to understand your perspective. Some people are limited by their own experiences, insecurities, or biases. Expecting understanding from those who are not willing or able to give it only leads to disappointment. It is important to accept that misunderstanding is a natural part of human interaction. You cannot force clarity into a mind that is not open to it. Trying to do so only leads to unnecessary emotional struggle and wasted effort. When you begin to accept that not everyone deserves your explanation, you naturally become more selective with your energy. You stop engaging in conversations that feel draining or pointless. You start observing before responding, thinking before reacting, and protecting your inner peace before defending your position. This shift brings a sense of calm because you are no longer constantly trying to fix how others perceive you. Instead, you focus on maintaining your own stability and growth. There is a quiet strength in choosing silence over explanation when it is not required. Silence does not mean weakness or avoidance. It means awareness. It means understanding that your truth does not need to be broadcast to everyone who questions it. It means recognizing that your life is not a public debate where every action requires defense. This awareness helps you preserve dignity and reduces unnecessary emotional exposure. As this mindset develops, you begin to attract people who naturally respect your boundaries. You notice that the right people do not demand constant explanations because they observe consistency in your actions. They understand that character is revealed through behavior over time, not through forced justification in a single conversation. This creates healthier relationships built on trust rather than constant clarification over time. You realize that protecting your energy is not selfish. It is necessary. Giving explanations to those who do not value them only weakens your focus and distracts you from your own path. Life becomes more peaceful when you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone and start choosing carefully where your words and attention truly belong. Over-explaining weakens your personal power in ways that are often subtle at first, but become deeply noticeable over time. When a person feels the need to constantly justify their actions, decisions, or emotions, they unknowingly place themselves in a position of defense. Instead of standing firm in their choices, they begin to negotiate their worth through words. This shift may seem harmless in the beginning, but it gradually affects confidence, presence, and how others perceive their authority. Personal power is built on clarity and self-trust. When you know who you are and why you do what you do, there is no internal pressure to constantly prove it to others. However, over-explaining comes from the opposite state of mind. It comes from uncertainty, fear of judgment, or the need for approval. When someone feels that their actions might be questioned, they rush to fill the silence with explanations. But in doing so, they unintentionally signal that their decisions are open for debate. This weakens their position because it invites unnecessary opinions into areas that should remain firm. Has notes, the more you explain yourself, the more you expose your inner reasoning to people who may not have your best interest at heart. Not everyone listens with understanding. Some people listen to find weaknesses, inconsistencies, or points they can use later. When you over-explain, you give them more material to analyze, question, or criticize. Instead of strengthening your position, you end up creating space for doubt where none was needed. There is also a psychological effect that over-explaining has on the individual. Each time you justify yourself excessively, you reinforce the idea that your initial decision was not strong enough on its own. This slowly conditions the mind to believe that authority must be supported by constant validation. Over time, this creates dependency on external approval, where a person no longer feels secure unless others agree with them. This weakens self-trust and creates emotional instability in decision-making. Strong personal power is often quiet. It does not rely on constant verbal defense. When someone is confident in their choices, they do not feel the urge to fill every gap with explanations. Their presence communicates certainty. Their actions carry weight without needing extra justification. This is why confident individuals often speak less but are taken more seriously. Their silence is not emptiness, it is stability over explaining. Also dilutes the impact of your words. When everything is explained in detail, nothing feels strong or final. People begin to tune out because there is too much information and not enough clarity. In contrast, simple and direct communication carries more authority. It leaves no unnecessary space for argument or confusion. The more concise you are, the more control you maintain over how your message is received. Another important aspect is emotional energy. Every explanation requires effort, focus, and emotional involvement. When this energy is repeatedly spent on unnecessary justification, it leaves a person mentally drained. This exhaustion reduces clarity in other areas of life, making it harder to focus on growth, goals, or personal development. Protecting your energy means choosing when to speak and when to remain silent instead of reacting to every question or doubt directed at you. There is also a shift in how others respond to you when you stop over-explaining. People begin to recognize boundaries more clearly. They understand that not every action will be debated or justified. This naturally increases respect because it signals self-assurance. When you no longer feel the need to defend every step, others begin to adjust their expectations and interactions with you over time. Reducing explanations leads to stronger internal confidence. You begin to rely less on external validation and more on your own judgment. Decisions become faster, clearer, and more aligned with your personal values. Troy snorts thoughts. Instead of constantly revisiting whether others approve of your choices, you focus on whether those choices align with your direction in life. This transformation does not mean communication disappears. It simply becomes intentional rather than reactive. You speak when necessary, explain when useful, and remain silent when it adds no value. In doing so, you preserve your personal power, maintain emotional balance, and build a stronger sense of self that is not easily influenced by outside opinion. Silence is stronger than constant justification because silence carries control, confidence, and emotional discipline, while constant justification often reveals insecurity and the need for approval. When a person feels the urge to repeatedly explain their actions or defend their choices, they unintentionally open a space where their authority is questioned. Silence, on the other hand, closes that space. It sends a clear message that not everything requires approval and not every opinion deserves a response in everyday life. People often fall into the trap of thinking that more words will create more understanding. They believe that if they explain their side clearly enough, others will eventually accept it. But reality does not always work that way. Many people are not listening to understand. They are listening to respond, judge, or reinforce their own beliefs. In such situations, constant justification becomes a cycle that never ends. No matter how much you explain, the other side may still remain unconvinced. She snorts, and your energy becomes drained in the process. Silence changes this dynamic completely. When you choose silence over unnecessary explanation, you remove yourself from the cycle of emotional exhaustion. You stop feeding into conversations that are not productive or respectful. Silence forces the situation to settle on its own instead of escalating it further. It creates space for reflection both for you and for others. In many cases, people begin to question their own assumptions when they do not receive the reaction they expect. There is also a psychological strength in silence. It shows that your confidence does not depend on external validation. When you are truly secure in your decisions, you do not feel the need to defend them repeatedly. You understand that your actions speak for themselves, and time will reveal the truth more effectively than words ever could. This kind of mindset reduces emotional pressure and helps you stay grounded even in situations where misunderstandings arise. Constant justification On the other hand, weaken emotional stability. It often comes from a place of anxiety where a person fears being misunderstood or judged unfairly. This fear leads them to over-explain, hoping to correct every perception, but instead of creating clarity, it often creates more confusion. The more you try to control how others perceive you, the more you lose control over your own peace of mind. Silence also protects your energy. Every explanation requires emotional investment, especially when the other person is not open-minded. Over time, this drains mental strength and distracts you from more important areas of life. When you choose silence, you conserve that energy and redirect it toward personal growth goals and stability. This shift helps you maintain focus instead of getting stuck in endless debates or unnecessary arguments. Another important aspect is how silence influences perception. People tend to respect what they cannot easily challenge. When you constantly justify yourself, you become available for continuous questioning. But when you remain calm and silent, it creates a sense of certainty around you. Others begin to realize that your decisions are not easily influenced by external pressure. This naturally increases respect and reduces unnecessary interference in your life. Silence does not mean weakness or avoidance. It is a conscious choice made from strength, not fear. It is the ability to decide that not every situation deserves a reaction and not every misunderstanding needs correction. This level of emotional control reflects maturity and self-awareness. It shows that you are not controlled by the need to be right in every moment. Over time, choosing silence over constant justification changes the way you experience life. You become less reactive and more observant. You begin to understand that many conflicts lose power when they are not fed with emotional responses. You also start to recognize that peace is often found not in winning arguments, but in not participating in unnecessary ones at all. Silence allows space for truth to unfold naturally. Instead of forcing understanding through words, you allow actions and time to reveal what is real. This removes pressure from your interactions and brings a sense of calm to your relationships and personal decisions, shaping a stronger and more composed way of living where emotional balance becomes more important than verbal validation. Actions speak louder than words ever will, because actions are the only true reflection of intention, discipline, and character. Words can be easily spoken, shaped, and adjusted to fit any situation, but actions require consistency, effort, and sacrifice. Many people can explain their goals, promise change, or express strong intentions, but only a few actually follow through with behavior that matches their words. Over time, life naturally separates those who speak from those who do. In human interaction, words often create an illusion of understanding. People can say what sounds right, what feels convincing, or what others want to hear. But words alone do not create trust. Trust is built when actions repeatedly confirm what has been said. When there is alignment between speech and behavior, credibility grows. When there is a gap between the two, doubt begins to form, no matter how convincing the words may be. This is why actions carry more weight than explanations or promises. A person may spend hours explaining their intentions, but if their behavior does not support those explanations, the words lose value. On the other hand, someone who speaks less but consistently acts with integrity builds a strong presence without needing to convince anyone. Their life becomes the evidence of their truth. One of the biggest mistakes people make is relying too heavily on words to define who they are. They believe that if they express their plans clearly enough, others will trust them. But reality does not respond to intentions alone. Reality responds to execution. A goal spoken but not acted upon remains an idea. A promise made but not fulfilled becomes meaningless. Only consistent action transforms intention into reality. There is also a deeper psychological truth behind why actions are more powerful. Human beings are naturally observant. Even when they do not openly acknowledge it, they pay attention to patterns in behavior. Over time, people may forget what you said, but they rarely forget what you did. Actions leave lasting impressions because they are experienced, not just heard. They create evidence that words cannot replicate. When a person focuses more on actions than explanations, their life becomes more stable and grounded. Instead of spending energy convincing others, they invest that energy into progress. This shift creates momentum. Every action, no matter how small, builds credibility and self-respect. Over time, this consistency becomes more powerful than any verbal assurance. Actions also remove confusion. Words can be interpreted in many different ways, but actions are clear and direct. There is no need to analyze or guess when behavior is consistent. This clarity reduces misunderstandings and build stronger trust in relationships, work, and personal growth. People feel more secure around those whose actions are reliable because predictability creates stability. Another important aspect is self-discipline. Acting consistently on what you say requires control over emotions, habits, and distractions. It means choosing effort over comfort and follow through over excuses. This process naturally builds strength of character. A person who repeatedly acts on their commitments develops resilience, while someone who only speaks about them remains unchanged. There is also a silent respect that actions generate. People may not always praise words, but they respect results. When someone consistently delivers through their actions, they do not need to defend themselves or explain their worth. Their results become their identity. This kind of respect is not requested, it is earned over time through repeated behavior. Reliance on words often leads to disappointment both for the person speaking and those listening. When expectations are created through promises but not fulfilled through actions, trust weakens. This is why focusing on doing rather than saying creates stronger and more lasting connections. It reduces the gap between expectation and reality. As life progresses, it becomes clear that actions define reputation far more than communication. A person is remembered not for how well they explained their plans but for how consistently they followed through on them. Actions shape legacy, influence perception, determine long-term success in a way that words alone never can. Let results prove who you are, instead of arguments, is a mindset that separates those who constantly struggle for validation from those who quietly build undeniable success. In a world where opinions are freely given and judgments are constantly made, many people fall into the habit of defending themselves through words. They try to explain, justify, and argue in order to be understood. But the reality is that arguments rarely change perception in a meaningful way. Results, however, speak a language that does not require interpretation. When a person depends on arguments to define their worth, they place themselves in a position of constant defense. Every situation becomes a debate, every misunderstanding becomes a conflict, and every opinion becomes something to correct. This creates mental exhaustion because the focus shifts from growth to proving oneself. Instead of moving forward, energy is spent trying to convince others who may or may not be open to understanding in the first place. Results change this entire dynamic. When you focus on producing real outcomes in your life, whether in personal development, career, or discipline, your progress becomes visible. There is no need to argue about your intentions or explain your capabilities when evidence is already present. Results are objective, while arguments are subjective. Arguments depend on perception, emotion, and bias, but results stand independently of opinion. One of the strongest aspects of results is that they cannot be easily denied. People may disagree with your words, question your plans, or challenge your ideas, but when consistent results appear, they naturally shift perception. Even those who doubted you are forced to acknowledge what is clearly visible. This silent transformation is far more powerful than any verbal defense could ever be. There is also a deeper emotional benefit to focusing on results instead of arguments. When you are no longer trying to convince everyone, you free yourself from unnecessary stress and emotional conflict. Arguments often drain energy because they require constant justification and mental engagement. Results, on the other hand, require focus, discipline, and patience. The energy that would have been spent on defending yourself is redirected toward building something meaningful. People who rely on arguments often become reactive. They respond quickly to criticism, feel the need to correct every misunderstanding, and get emotionally involved in every disagreement. This reactionary behavior weakens their sense of control. In contrast, those who focus on results become more composed. They understand that not every opinion deserves a response, and not every challenge requires verbal defense. Over time, results create a strong personal identity. Instead of being known for what you say, you become known for what you achieve. This shift is powerful because achievements carry long-term weight. Words may be forgotten, but outcomes remain. A consistent record of success builds credibility that no argument can replace. Another important aspect is patience. So results take time, effort, and consistency. Choosing results over arguments means accepting that growth is a process rather than an instant validation. It requires trust in your actions, even when others cannot see immediate progress. This patience builds resilience and strengthens character because it teaches you to stay committed even in silence. Arguments often come from insecurity or frustration, especially when a person feels misunderstood. But reacting to every misunderstanding only increases emotional instability. When you shift your focus to results, you remove the need for constant approval. You begin to trust that progress will eventually speak for itself, even if it is not immediately recognized. There is also a natural respect that results generate. People may question your methods, disagree with your approach, or misunderstand your journey, but consistent results eventually command attention. Success has its own authority. It does not need explanation or defense. It simply stands as proof of effort and discipline over time. This mindset transforms how you navigate life. You become less concerned with winning arguments and more focused on achieving meaningful outcomes. You stop trying to convince others of your potential and instead allow your progress to demonstrate it. This shift reduces conflict, increases clarity, and builds a stronger foundation for long-term success, where actions naturally outweigh words and results become the most powerful form of communication. In the end, the message is clear. Peace comes when you stop trying to prove yourself to everyone. Not every person deserves your explanation, not every opinion needs your response, and not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. The more you try to defend yourself through words, the more you lose energy, clarity, and emotional control. True strength is not found in constant justification, but in knowing when to stay silent and when to move forward without reaction. Life naturally rewards those who focus less on arguments and more on actions. Words may create temporary understanding, but they rarely change deep perception. Silence snorts discipline, and consistency builds something far more powerful than explanations ever could. When you stop over-explaining, you protect your peace. When stop seeking approval, you reclaim your confidence. And when you stop arguing, you redirect your energy toward growth. At the highest level, your results become your voice. Your actions become your identity. Your progress becomes your answer. People may misunderstand you for a moment, but time always reveals truth. And in the long run, what you build will always speak louder than what you say.